I'm not too proud to admit it. When I was in your shoes studying for the CCNA, I was petrified of network address translation. And sure enough, here we have Chapter 17's review lab on none other than network address translation. Fortunately, after practicing with NAT in environments like this simple three-router topology, I started to fear NAT a lot less. Remember, we kind of fear the unknown, so one of the things you can do to conquer that fear is make the unknown unknown quantity. Sure, just get in there and practice with it. Here you can see our first step is to configure R2 for inside source NAT. We're going to use a standard access list numbered 1 that permits the 10/8 network and mask. So we're going to ensure the NAT configuration allows PAT using the gigabit 0/1 interface. All right, so what is the access control list all about? Well, let's look at this device, shall we? And we can, I think, quickly figure out what that access list is all about. So I'm going to do a show IP interface brief, and we can see that we have the 0/0 interface in the 10/12/12 network, and then we have the 10/23/23 network, and it sounds to me like the network address translation access control list that we're going to set up here is going to dictate what addresses that we are translating. So we're going to say translate these addresses that are on our inside interface. And yeah, we see that in the very next step here that we are going to be identifying gig 0/0 as the NAT inside interface. So imagine a whole bunch of systems living off the 0/0 interface. They've got their 10.x addresses, and we're saying we want to translate those addresses. So that's what the access list is all about here. It's what IP addresses are we going to be translating? So we know who we're translating, and we know that we're going to translate those into the IP address that is on the outside interface. So all of these inside systems are going to be translated to that single address. By the way, you probably note what's happening here is this R1 device would not be able to reach the R3 device because R3 wouldn't know how to get back to R1. But in this scenario, we're going to be translating all these R1 addresses, if you will, and we're going to be translating them into the addressing scheme that is on this segment. So a lot of times network address translation can overcome the fact that you don't have full reachability configured. Okay, well, I'm just going on and on and on about this, but it's time for us to go in and practice with this configuration. So notice one of the things they made very clear was that we needed to use an access list that was a standard access list using a number of 1, and it needed to permit 10.0.0.0 and the /8. How would we do that with the wildcard mask? It would be 0.255.255.255. So we are saying we don't care about anything other than 10 being in the first octet. So these 255s in these octets mean we don't care about what's going on in those octets. So there is the access control list that they said we should set up for our NAT configuration. Now we're ready to give the NAT instructions. Yeah, we're ready to give the NAT instructions. So we are going to say IP NAT, and you can use your context-sensitive help here. I do to this day when configuring network address translation. So IP NAT question mark, we're supposed to be doing inside source NAT. So I'm going to say inside and source, and what is the local addresses that we are going to translate? Well, we have a list that gives those addresses, and that list is access control list number 1. So who are we going to translate? We're going to translate anyone that has an IP address that begins with the number 10. Yeah. And what's next in our instructions? We are going to translate them into an interface's IP address, and that is the gig 0/1 interface address. So there's our NAT instructions. Go ahead and do network address translation on our inside source addresses. What will those addresses be? Well, we define that for you in access list 1. They're going to be 10.x addresses. And what are we going to translate them into? Well, the single IP address on the gig 0/1 interface. And of course, this is officially called Port Address Translation, or PAT. Once we give the instructions for NAT, our next step is going to be step 2, where we must specify what is the inside NAT interface and what is the outside NAT interface. This is so easy to do. We go into the 0/0 interface and we say, you are the NAT inside interface with the IP NAT inside command. And then we go to the 0/1 and we say, you are the outside interface. We're going to end our configuration. We're going to save our configuration. And now step 3 has us verify this NAT configuration. We go to R1 and we are going to do a ping to 10.23.23.3. And this ping, look at that, couple of failures, but then it succeeds. We can run it again. We see all that success. And now we're going to go to the R2 device and we are going to issue the show IP NAT translation command to see if NAT had anything to do with this connectivity. So show IP NAT translations, and look at that. We can see the translations taking place. So the inside local IP address was 10.12.12.1. That was the actual IP address on the R1 router. It got translated into 10.23.23.2. The inside global here matches the outside local and outside global. The outside global and the the outside local and the outside global refer to who we pinged. 10.23.23.3. But here on this side, we can see the effects of the translation. The 10.12.12.1 address was translated into the address we picked. That's the outside interface on gig 0/1, and it is 10.23.23.2. Isn't it amazing how NAT can really allow connectivity? Again, R3 has no idea how to get to R1. But when R1 does the ping, R2 translates R1 into an address that R3 does know about. R3 responds to that address, and then R2 forwards it on to the actual host. So, network address translation, nothing to fear. As we have seen, you can go in a lab like this, configure it, play with it, experiment with it, and you will become very comfortable with network address translation. And the great news is, from the CCNA perspective, it's not all of NAT we must know. it's doing a simple inside source NAT config as I just demonstrated, which would be CCNA level network address translation. Well, we can't leave this lab without ensuring that we got 100% for our grade, and that's exactly what happened. So we have succeeded in reviewing NAT and passing with flying colors our review lab end of chapter. Thanks for joining me, and come on back. We've got plenty more chapters to go in our text on Packet Tracer for CCNA Hands-On Mastery.